Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. I've got a really exciting printer to go over with you today. I've been testing it out for the last few days. It's the FLSun T1 Pro Delta style printer. Now, a lot of people haven't had a chance to get their hands on a Delta style printer. The really interesting technology, very super ultra fast. This one will hit 1,000 millimeters per second with 30,000 millimeters per second squared acceleration, and then it's got a flow rate of 90 millimeters cubed per second, which will help you get that filament extruded at those high speeds. But yeah, we're going to take a deep dive into this. I've done a lot of tests over the last few days, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll start by taking you on a little tour of this printer right here. It's a very solid printer, well built. It's got a decent amount of weight to it, but assembly is really easy. I'll include some pictures of that. I've got an unboxing video to go over with you guys as well. But yeah, it's got a nice glass front door, really good quality. Everything about it's sturdy. Really good responsive touchscreen here as well. No issues with that whatsoever. Got the extruder right here. It is direct drive, which is great. It's good that they were able to work direct drive into this printer and still keep those speeds up. One thing to note while we're inside looking at this, the spool holder is usually right here. The spool fits inside. There's a pin right here that you put your spool in and lock it into place right there. It works well. One of the things I will say, you usually route your filament back through here, through this hole in this bracket, up along the cable here, through this hole in this bracket, and into there. For me, I felt like it was causing a decent amount of friction. It was especially challenging when trying to print TPU. So I've noticed on the inside here, you can see the hole. There's a hole in the middle of the top that runs up, and I put a spool holder on top and routed it straight down into the printer, which actually works extremely well. I haven't had any issues with filament tangling or anything like that. I'll probably continue to use the spool holder up there, but it's also a good way for you to be able to run filament directly from a filament dryer into the printer, especially when you're doing nylon or polycarbonate filaments that are sensitive and they need to be dry and preheated. But it works very well in this configuration. So I did a lot of tests with this printer. One of them, I know I'd heard from several people that there's dimensional accuracy issues on some of the old Delta style printers. So what I did was I used these calibration cubes and I spread them across the build plate. I did varying patterns to see if there are spots across the build plate where there may be more dimensional accuracy issues than other printers. But it was actually very accurate. The largest deviation that I found across the build plate was maybe 0.3 millimeters, which is not bad at all. I was actually very impressed with this. But I'll go ahead. So we've got a camera right here that does time lapse as well. You can get a live feed from your phone through the FLSun app. But yeah, it's a very impressive printer. Wireless printing, I didn't have any issues sending prints directly to this from my computer. I was using FLSun Slicer at first. I did have a couple of issues with, and I'll show you the Eiffel Tower print that I did here in a moment. I did have some issues with it not recognizing some of the small pieces of the model. I downloaded Orca Slicer and used the same configuration files, and it worked perfectly fine on Orca. So I kind of moved over to Orca a little bit just because of that issue. Maybe it's something that'll be rectified in the future. I didn't see anything in the settings that really needed to be fixed, but it works well with Orca for sure. But I'll go ahead and move on and show you some of the other things that I printed with this. All right, so I'll take a look at some of the test prints I did. I'm sure the majority of you are familiar with the Benchy. I printed 10 different types of filament. I printed 10 Benchies with 10 different types of filament using just the standard profiles for each filament type that was provided in the FLSun slicer. So I'll go ahead and start off. I did PLA. This one printed in 21 minutes and 17 seconds. That's just their standard profile. Basically, as fast as you can get, but guaranteed good quality. That one turned out really good. PETG, which I'm sure a lot of you know, can be challenging to use, especially with stringing, under extrusion, things of that nature. I really didn't have any issues with this. It printed very clean. I was very happy with that. And this is PCCF, so polycarbonate infused with carbon fiber. Another very challenging filament to print with, but this turned out absolutely crisp and clean. There's no post-processing done on this. It turned out immaculate. Moving on to nylon. Anybody that's tried to print with nylon knows it's a challenging filament. You have to be really careful with making sure it's dry, or else it'll bubble and pop and not extrude properly. This was with some very old nylon that I had. The spool was probably about 2 years old. I didn't even dry it or anything. I put it in there and let it get to work. One thing that's nice that I've noticed about having the spool in the top of the print chamber is that heat rises and it heats that filament up, which is really good for nylon. It'll heat it up, preheat it, and it'll dry it out. So that it works really well for nylon and other filaments that can benefit from that extra heat. So I've got ASA right here. Turned out very, very good. No complaints about that whatsoever. It's very strong filament. It's nice to have a printer that can handle ASA. I think the only thing that I'd say, which is very common, there's a little bit of elephant's foot and you lose the detail in the writing on the bottom, but that's pretty common with ASA. Like I could fine tune that probably and try to resolve that, but that's pretty normal. And I've got ABS here as well. Turned out very good. This is carbon fiber infused PLA. Turned out very smooth. Same with the wood-filled PLA. I wanted to do a silk PLA because sometimes that can be very challenging. You get a lot of stringing issues. Sometimes they turn out brittle, but this printed very well with their standard silk, the PLA silk profile. No complaints there. One that I really wanted to do, which is a little less common, I don't see a whole lot of people printing Benchies at TPU, but I did this TPU Benchy right here. It's definitely not perfect. It has some overhang issues on the front, but honestly, like overall, I'm very impressed with this. TPU can be very challenging, and it handled it very well. You don't usually do kind of complex prints like this with TPU. If you're doing something like gaskets and other things, I think it would print very well. But yeah, that's a TPU benchy right there. 95A hardness, but it turned out well. So the one thing I'll say, as we're we're going over these filaments here, a lot of them are abrasive. One thing to note about this is it does just come with a brass nozzle, which isn't a huge issue, but if you're wanting to print the carbon fiber filled filaments and stuff like that, even like glow in the dark can be abrasive and it'll wear your nozzles out fast. It's best to have a hardened steel nozzle, but those are available. It uses a V6 style nozzle, which are very easy to find on websites like Amazon. I ordered a 5-pack for less than $6 that are going to be getting here, so I'll be able to throw that on there and run whatever filament I want through it. It does have a 300-degree nozzle temp, so you can do those high temp filaments that I was showing you. Sometimes when you're using a hardened steel nozzle, you want to increase that nozzle temperature a little bit because the hardened steel is less conductive. But that's like really the only thing that you might have to change, especially when you're printing at high speeds with this. Just turn that temperature up like 5 degrees and you should be good to go if you make that change. But yeah, overall, very impressive. One kind of torture test that I did, I really wanted to push the limits of this printer, is this Eiffel Tower right here. This used the full Z height that was available. This is printed at 329 millimeters on the Z axis. This absolutely pushed the limits of the printer, but it turned out very, very good. This took about 8 hours to print. It was all printed in one piece. Like I said, it just used the full Z height. It's not a multi-piece print. It printed just like this. I did have supports under here just because of how much I scaled it up. It was going to need some supports because the bridges would be too long. But honestly, the support removal was easy. The details turned out really well on all the crossbars in the tower. Overall, very, very impressed to be able to knock out something with this level of detail in roughly 8 hours. So that was a very impressive thing for me. But yeah, overall, very, very impressed with this printer. It is loud. Obviously with high speed, you have parts moving around at higher speeds, making more noise than normal. With the high speed, you need better cooling. This has a CPAP fan inside of it. It's mounted on the top, and that's what this hose is running down into the extruder to cool those parts. It can get very loud. They include this fan silencer that you can print and put over the vent on top to kind of silence that fan a little bit. It does make a little bit of a difference, but you're still gonna have some noise coming from this. It's a noisy printer, but if you slow it down, if you're not in a rush, you slow it down, the fan speeds will come down. It can quiet down. Any of the other high-speed printers out there, whenever you crank that speed up, you're gonna have a noisier printer. But it's kind of to be expected when you're getting into ultra fast speeds like this. It's a trade-off. It doesn't bother me. It's not a printer that you'd want to put in your bedroom, because if you had a print running overnight, you're probably not going to be able to sleep. It's very, very loud, but it's not that bad. But yeah, I don't really have any other complaints about this. Like, there's really not much at all to complain about. It's all like kind of nitpicky things, small stuff, but overall I'm very impressed with this printer. I definitely recommend it to anybody that's interested in getting into ultra high speed printing with these Delta style printers from FLSun. Very good product, very impressed. So I'll get into a little unboxing video, do a little time lapse of the unboxing, and that'll wrap it up. But I appreciate your time. I'm gonna try to make more reviews, test more printers. I'm gonna try to test as many as I can, as in depth as possible. If there's any other questions that anybody has about this printer, go ahead and drop it in the comments and I'll get right back to you. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get into the unboxing.